Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic. Let's do it. What's the worst punishment you ever received as a kid from your parents, and what did you do to deserve it? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My dad was smart. All his punishments were things he would have to do eventually. One time I went to a party at my friend's house without telling my parents. I was woken up at 6 a.m. to a breakfast I couldn't eat because I was hungover. Then I was sent outside to pick up sticks. My parents' backyard is surrounded with trees. There's a never-ending supply of sticks you can pick up. Not just big ones, any tiny twig in the grass was to be picked up. Walking around, bending over to grab sticks for hours while hungover was a good enough punishment to keep me from sneaking to parties. I went on a school trip to the local amusement park when I was 14 or 15 years old. The trip was at the end of the school year. Buses picked you up at the school in the morning and dropped you off at the park, and then picked you up at the park later that night and dropped you back at the school for your parents to take you home. So that night my parents show up at the school to take me home. But I don't get off the bus. They ask everyone they see, but nobody knows what happened to me. This is before cell phones, so they got home to check the voicemail, no messages. They wait, but still no call. They call my friends' houses, but I'm not there. They call the hospitals, they call the police. I'm nowhere to be found, except I was somewhere, of course. I was still at the park riding the rides. The bus had been scheduled to leave the park 2 hours before closing. A friend's mom had gone on the trip in her own vehicle and offered to give me a ride home if I wanted to stay until the park closed. Hell yes. I want to stay until the park closes. It never occurred to me to call home and tell my parents that I wouldn't be on the bus. I just assumed they'd figure it out. I wasn't a very good son. So, anyway, a friend's mom drops me off at home 2 hours after I've been missing. My mom sees us in the driveway and comes out screaming. Not at me, but at the friend's mom for not making me call them. After the friend's mom left, that's when I got yelled at. And I deserved it, no question about it. Up to this point in the story, I'm entirely in the wrong. I had a part-time job working at a summer camp, so the next day my mom drives me to work, but rather than drop me off, she goes into work with me and tells my boss about what happened last night, still screaming, and how I shouldn't be trusted to take care of children because of what a terrible son I am, and I should be fired immediately. She's doing this in front of everyone. My boss, my coworkers, the kids, and some of the kids' parents, and I'm in tears from embarrassment. So that's great. The boss takes me into his office privately, says my dad had warned him that my mom has bipolar disorder and might do something like this and not to worry about it. I've been a great employee and whatever happens at home has nothing to do with my performance at work. And if I ever need to talk, his door is wide open. That was the day I learned that my mother had bipolar disorder. I don't think it is the worst thing that happened, but when I was younger, I did Kumon, which is basically Satan's education system. They had out these packets where you do math problems over and over again. There would be like 24 questions in a packet, and my parents decided I would be their victim in this atrocious act of parenting. 2 older sisters. So I ended up with 32 packets a week. It just wasn't possible. 768 math problems, not including schoolwork. They began a rule where for every math problem that I did not do and got wrong, I get 1 spank with a metal coat hanger. My ass did not fare well. I had an undiagnosed kidney issue as a kid where my kidneys didn't drain fully. This resulted in me wetting my bed almost every night despite not drinking anything before bed and using the toilet before bed. My stepmom got fed up with this and made me lie in my own piss for hours on end. I also had to wear the dirty underwear sometimes too. Probably not the worst, but the most memorable. One time I left school in the middle of class, just walked off into the woods. The school called the police and searched for me. I was angry because of a bully of mine threw my backpack out the window, and the teacher told me to go get it. So when they found me, I was completely unapologetic. Called the teacher a bitch, got on the local news, radio, very small town. So, my mom is telling Dad about all this stuff that I did, only she gets me and my brother mixed up all the time. So she's like, and Dargis brother did this and Dargis brother did that, and my dad is all pissed as shit, grabs Dargis brother and spanks the shit out of him while I watch. with a smile on my face. Then my mom is all, no, that was Dargis 007, beating in my life. When I was in high school, I would call my dad on the bus on my way home from school to see if my beast of a stepmom was home, what kind of mood she was in, if I should take any special precautions with my behavior, etc. One day I did just this, and my dad told me that my stepmom had stayed home from work because she felt sick. His advice was to go quietly to my room so as not to disturb her and, for bonus points, clean my room. And I listened to him. Right around the time I had finished making my bed, my stepmom burst into my room screaming at me, slapping me, and throwing me into walls and dressers for not greeting her appropriately when I got home. Then she took my cell phone and all the other phones in the house and called my dad, telling him that I had called her a fat bitch. Well, I wouldn't have been wrong if I had, and that's why I was all bruised up. While the being thrown into walls and being slapped sucked, the worst punishment was that she tore the shirt I had been wearing. It was a Chicago Cubs shirt my dad had bought me at our very last outing that was just the two of us. When I was around 5 or 6, we were staying at my mom's grandfather's place. I was in the living room with my older brother and I farted. He went and complained to my father, who asked if I had done it. I lied and said no. My father grabbed me by the hair and dragged me into the laundry. A tiny room with no windows and all these old-fashioned gardening tools that scared me as a kid. I hated that laundry. While in there, he got a thick wooden stick and beat me with it until I couldn't stand. Then he locked me in there, begging to come out. Every time I spoke, he'd come back and beat me again. After a while, I just sat and cried. Periodically, he'd come in to yell and hit me again. It went on for a few hours until my mom came and let me out. I was in so much pain I could barely walk the few meters to my bed, where I had to lie on my stomach because of the pain. When I was a kid, all I wanted for Christmas was the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier. Me too. The big one. That year, my parents bought me a button of Joe stuff, probably close to $500, early 1980s, which was a small fortune in G.I. Joes, probably close to every available toy, and I, being a spoiled brat, threw a tantrum that I didn't get the carrier. Then, my dad pulls A Christmas Story and brings out this big box from the other room. I dove on it, cackling with glee. I knew it was my carrier. Paper went flying. I tore into it like a raving lunatic. It was my aircraft carrier. My heart was pounding with excitement. I was lying on top of the box, so happy. Then my dad taught me a lesson in thankfulness. He took it away, snatched it right out from under me, and told me that he was going to return it to the store because I was an ungrateful little shit. A few days later, we drove to the store, and he made me return it. He then took the money and bought some golfing equipment for himself. I think I got a cheeseburger out of the deal. It was horrible. I hated him for weeks, but I never complained about a gift again, mostly out of fear. However, looking back on it as an adult who has raised his own kids, my father was a genius. That was one of the best lessons I was ever taught. When I was a kid, my father was teaching me the concept of money. He had a stack of singles, $1 bills, and a $50 bill. And he said, "Which one do you want?" And I took the one with more bills because more meant more to me. And he's like, "No, this one is worth more than this one." I was like 6. And so he did it again, and I took the big one again. And then in my frustration, I ripped the bill in half. And he started chasing me, and I climbed up a tree in our front yard. And he didn't run, he just kind of leaned against it. And he just said, "You'll get hungry eventually." So he didn't beat me up or anything, but yeah, smart. I have so many, but one sticks out. In middle school, if you had below a 70% on a test, your parents had to sign the paper and then return it to the teacher. Well, as you can guess, I got below a 70%. I waited until the next morning, right before school, to have my dad sign the paper. He got pissed and open palm punched me in the face, giving me a nosebleed. I had to go to school with blood on my shirt. There were a lot of punishments I received that now looking back were signs of physical abuse, just to name a few. Punched so hard I fell into a door and chipped a tooth. Bruises, choked until on the verge of passing out, and many, many more. I had a playroom when I was younger. It was basically just a spare room that my parents had no idea what to do with, so they basically gave it to me for me to use. I had all my games and toys in there, and a TV. One day one of my cousins was over and we were talking about the TV, and he said some bullshit about pouring water into a TV and it being fine. Then he dared me to pour a little bit of water into my TV. I took the bait and did it and broke the TV. My parents were so furious that I was banned from the playroom for either a week or a month, I can't remember. I wasn't allowed to play with anything in my playroom for that week or month. My cousin was a real bro that day, despite tricking me into it. He felt bad, so while everyone was asleep, he moved my Lego bucket out of my playroom and snuck it into my room and hid it on the other side of my bed while I was asleep. That was some real ninja shit. My parents tried to overrule it and say, no, you can't play with your Lego, but we rule lawyered the shit out of them and claimed they said I couldn't play with anything that was currently in my playroom. My Legos weren't in my playroom, thus I was free to play with them. We put up such a fuss that they gave up. My dad tackled me onto the bed and started to strangle me. From the little I remember, I was refusing to stop working on a project and clean. This caused a yelling argument between me and my mother. My dad then barges in and does that. Good times. Another one. My dad punched a hole through the bathroom door whilst I was in the shower one day because my mom's phone was in my pants pocket and I told her I would give it to her when I'm done showering. And the last one. Got my keys for my car taken from me due to the fact I refused to pick up my dad from the casinos where he got lost and drunk. I would have had to find him even though I would not even be allowed to. My dad's brother was with him, but left my dad there and came back. For some reason, I got yelled at about how shitty of a son I am for refusing to pick up my drunk dad since I didn't have a car. I almost lost my job. Gotta love parents. This isn't the worst punishment I received by far, but it is the worst punishment in behavior to punishment ratio. My mother is an alcoholic, drug-addicted, bipolar mess. She's got a list of petty shoplifting and drunk disorderly arrests about a mile long. She's been sectioned over half a dozen times, and I was actually removed from her care around age 10 and lived with my grandparents until I was 16. When I was 17, I lived with my mother again because homelessness was basically the other option. One day I took a bottle of vodka to a party. It was a liter bottle, but it was only half full because it was the survivor of a previous party. Well, imagine my surprise when I add it to some Fanta and it tastes weak, weaker than regular Fanta. Confused, I take a swig from the bottle and yeah, water. Fantastic. So I get replacement booze and party hard, etc. The next day I confront my mother, who just lies and lies and lies to my face. I accuse her of entering my locked room, stealing from me, the whole 9 yards. I get the bottle of vodka water and show it to her. She takes it, and I sit there smugly like I'm the amateur detective who just found the crucial piece of evidence that puts her away for life. So I return to consciousness a moment later, very aware that I'm bleeding and wet, and there's glass everywhere. My mother had just smashed the bottle over my skull, and yeah, she was standing there with a triumphant look like her assault proved she was innocent of my accusation. I called an ambulance. The police turned up too. They arrested her, despite my protests, because she was hurling abuse at them. I got stitches. I didn't press charges. I come home and my key doesn't fit the lock. Her asshole boyfriend opens the door and suggests I find somewhere else to live. Luckily, I have some pretty cool friends. I got in trouble a lot when I was a kid. More often than not, I was grounded from TV or going outside, or they would take away my favorite toys. The worst was being grounded because it gave me time to read, so they took away my books for a couple of weeks while I was 8 or so. But I still read, damn it. I used to sneak downstairs after everyone went to bed and grab a book off the bookcase in the living room. I finished Tommyknockers, The Stand, It, and Gerard's Game before my parents caught on. My parents, some friends, and I had gone out to dinner at Pizza Hut to celebrate my birthday. We sat at a different table because the booths weren't large enough, and we were all fine with that. We'd gotten some really shitty service that night. The place was empty besides us, but the pizza still arrived cold, and drinks we'd ordered first still came even later. So we started joking about a negative tip. A dare was thrown down, and I accepted. On the way out, I stole $2 out of the tip plate. They didn't see. Still, my dad found out, and overhearing, he whooped my ass good when I got home. Smacked around so hard, the entire side of my face was bruised for a couple months. I mean, it had mostly gone by the first month, and I sort of hid it by letting my teen beard grow out.